The bar fight. Ian Carver wiped blood from his chin as he stared down at the unconscious form of Groa, the Malachi pirate captain. The bar around them lay in ruins, debris and unconscious or dead pirates scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Ten, his Varen partner, nursed her broken arm while keeping watch over their quarry. "You know," Ian said, pulling restraints from his belt, "sometimes I think you worry too much about that phrase." Ten's ruby feathers bristled. "Hold my beer. It's practically a death sentence whenever you say it. Got us the target, didn't it?" Ian secured the restraints around Groa's massive wrists, the enhanced metal designed specifically to hold species with superhuman strength. "Got us a destroyed bar, multiple injuries, and probably a massive fine from the outpost authorities," Ten countered, but there was a note of amusement in her voice. She'd been working with Ian long enough to know this was fairly standard procedure. What wasn't standard was the small device that fell from Groa's pocket as Ian rolled him over. It was a quantum-encrypted data chip, the kind used by high-level military personnel or corporate executives. Not something a common pirate should possess. "Well, that's interesting," Ian muttered, picking up the chip. The surface was unmarked, but the security protocols visible on its display indicated Terran Citizens Federation military-grade encryption. Ten tilted her head, a gesture Ian had learned indicated curiosity in her species. "That's not standard pirate gear." "No, it's not." Ian pocketed the chip and activated his comm unit. "Central, this is Carver. Target secured at coordinates 227-884-993, Jacobson 2. Requesting pickup and medical assistance. Also." He glanced around at the destruction, "probably need a cleanup crew." The response came immediately, "Copy that, Carver. Local authorities are en route. Medical team dispatched. Cleanup crew authorized. Standard deduction from your bounty for damages." Ian sighed. "Copy that, Central. Carver out." As they waited for pickup, Ten moved closer to examine Groa's unconscious form. "Something's not adding up here, Ian. We've been chasing him for 15 days, but why would a pirate captain with military-grade encryption tech waste time hitting small colonial transports?" "Good question." Ian pulled out the data chip again, turning it over in his hands. "And why did he seem so intent on making sure we found him here? This whole setup feels wrong." Ten's feathers stood on end, a sign of agitation. "You think we were set up?" "I think." Ian was cut off by the sound of approaching sirens. "I think we need to have a private chat with our friend here before we hand him over to the authorities." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Local law enforcement arrived, followed by medical teams and the cleanup crew. Ian and Ten gave their statements, filed the necessary paperwork, and arranged for Groa's transfer to their ship rather than local holding cells, citing regulations about high-risk prisoners. Their ship, the Lucky Break, was a modified Hawthorne-class corvette, officially registered as a bounty hunter vessel but with enough unofficial modifications to make it a match for most military craft. They secured Groa in the holding cell, and Ian immediately headed for the medical bay to patch himself up while Ten kept watch. As he applied regenerative gel to his wounds, Ian couldn't shake the feeling that they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a simple bounty hunt. The data chip burned in his pocket like a small sun, but he knew better than to try accessing it without proper precautions. Military-grade encryption usually came with equally military-grade security measures. Ten's voice came over the intercom. "Ian, our guest is waking up." Perfect timing. Ian finished securing the last bandage and headed to the holding cells. Time to get some answers. The holding cell was state-of-the-art, with energy fields and physical barriers designed to contain even the strongest species. Groa sat on the reinforced bench, his massive form making it look like children's furniture. Despite his injuries, his tiny black eyes gleamed with intelligence that hadn't been apparent during the bar fight. "Comfortable?" Ian asked, pulling up a chair outside the cell. Groa's laugh was like stones grinding together. Your hospitality leaves much to be desired, human. Says the guy who tried to crush my windpipe. Ian pulled out the data chip. Let's talk about this. The change in Groa's demeanor was subtle but immediate. His muscles tensed slightly, and his breathing changed rhythm. You don't want to get involved with that, Groa said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Just turn me in, collect your bounty, and forget you ever saw it. Ten moved closer to the cell, her feathers reflecting the blue glow of the energy field. Why would a pirate have military-grade encryption? Groa's eyes darted between them. Sometimes it's better not to know things. Safer. We're already involved, Ian said. The moment you decided to make a show of force at that bar instead of just running again like you had been. You wanted us to catch you. The Malachi was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely audible. There are things happening in the outer systems. Things that make pirates like me look like children playing games. That chip, it contains proof. Proof of what? Ten asked. Of who really controls the frontier. Groa leaned forward. You think the Terran Citizens Federation is all-powerful? They're just puppets. There are older powers out there, powers that have been waiting, watching. And now they're making their move. Before Ian could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. Ten rushed to the nearest terminal while Ian kept his eyes on their prisoner. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL, Ten reported. Military configuration, but no recognition codes broadcasting. Groa pressed against the energy field. They're here. Listen to me, you need to run. Now. Take the chip to Dash. The ship rocked with a massive impact, throwing Ian against the wall. The lights flickered, and emergency sirens joined the proximity alarm in a cacophony of warning sounds. Direct hit to our port shield. Ten shouted. Shield integrity at 60%. Ian scrambled to his feet. Get us out of here. Too late, Groa said, his voice filled with resignation. They're already here. The sound of cutting tools came from above them, and Ian knew they were being boarded. He drew his pistol and looked at Groa. Last chance. What are we dealing with? The Malachi's expression was grim. The end of everything you think you know about the galaxy. And if they get that chip, the end of everything else too. Another explosion rocked the ship, and the lights went out completely, leaving them in darkness broken only by the blue glow of the holding cell's energy field. In that dim light, Ian could hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching from multiple directions. The hunt that had started in a dusty bar on a frontier world was about to become something much more dangerous. As Ian checked his weapon and took up a defensive position, he couldn't help but think that maybe Ten was right. Sometimes, hold my beer, really were the most terrifying words in the universe. And they were about to find out exactly how terrifying things could get. The hidden truth. The darkness in the Lucky Break's holding cells was broken by bursts of weapons fire. Ian rolled behind a support column as particle beams carved through the air where he'd been standing. Ten had taken position near the cell controls, her enhanced vision giving her an advantage in the low light. 6 hostiles, she reported, combat frames, military grade. Not standard Federation design. Ian blind fired around the column, forcing their attackers to take cover. Of course not. That would be too simple. The combat frames were humanoid mechs, standing roughly 8 feet tall, their armored forms moving with an unsettling organic fluidity. Their weapons were built into their arms, and their faceplates were blank, reflective surfaces that offered no hint of who or what might be controlling them. Groa pressed against his cell's energy field. Let me out. I can help. Right, Ian scoffed, because that worked out so well last time. Another volley of fire forced Ian deeper into cover. The combat frames were advancing methodically, using overlapping fields of fire to pin them down. They were well trained, coordinated, definitely not pirates or common mercenaries. 10 suddenly launched herself from her position, using her natural agility and cybernetic enhancements to practically dance between the energy beams. Her claws, still modified from the bar fight, found gaps in one combat frame's armor. Sparks flew as she tore into its systems, and the machine stumbled. Ian took advantage of the distraction, drawing his backup weapon, a compact plasma cutter designed for breaching ship hulls. He fired 3 quick bursts, the superheated plasma burning through another frame's chest plate. The chip. Groa shouted over the chaos. They're here for the chip. You can't let them have it. 2 more combat frames fell to 10's claws, but the remaining pair had adapted to their tactics. One launched a volley of micromissiles that forced 10 to retreat, while the other deployed a capture net of molecular filaments. Ian saw the net coming and knew their standard energy shields wouldn't stop it. In a split-second decision, he reached for the cell controls. If you betray us, he warned Groa, I'll space you myself. The energy field dropped just as the net deployed. Groa burst from the cell like a battering ram, his massive bulk absorbing the net and crushing one of the combat frames against the wall. The last frame turned its weapons on the Malachi, but 10 was already moving. She landed on its back, her claws finding and severing crucial power conduits. As the last frame fell, Ian kept his weapon trained on Groa. The Malachi raised his hands slowly. If I wanted to betray you, he said, I would have done it at the bar. Speaking of betrayal, 10 said, examining one of the fallen frames, these units have Federation manufacturing marks. But the design. She trailed off, her feathers bristling. Not Federation, Groa confirmed. Something older. Something that was here long before humans reached the stars. The ship's emergency lights flickered back on, bathing them in red illumination. Ian checked the security feeds, no more hostiles in sight, but the 3 ships were still out there, maintaining position. We need answers, Ian said, starting with what's on that chip. Not here, Groa insisted. We need to reach someone who can decode it safely. I know a place, a person dash. Another impact rocked the ship. 10 rushed to a terminal. They're powering up main weapons. Ian holstered his gun. Give me a course, fast. Groa rattled off coordinates. Asteroid belt, Carter's Reach. There's a station there, hidden. The only person who can help us is waiting. Ian didn't like it, but they were out of options. He sprinted for the bridge, 10 close behind. Groa followed more slowly, his bulk making rapid movement difficult in the ship's corridors. The Lucky Break's engines roared to life as Ian threw himself into the pilot's seat. The ship broke free from the attackers' boarding tubes, tearing metal and spewing atmosphere into space. 10, get on weapons. Groa, strap in or get crushed. The pursuing ships opened fire, but Ian was already executing a complex series of maneuvers. The Lucky Break might look like a standard bounty hunter vessel, but its engines and control systems had been heavily modified. 10 managed to land several hits on their pursuers, disrupting their formation. Ian used the opening to push the engines past their safety limits, preparing for a blind FTL jump. This is suicide, 10 warned. We don't have proper coordinates plotted. Hold my beer, Ian grinned, and jumped. The universe twisted around them as they tore through spacetime. When they emerged, they were deep in an asteroid field, the massive rocks providing cover from any pursuit. I hate you, 10 muttered, but there was relief in her voice. Groa pulled himself up from where he'd been thrown. Carter's Reach. We made it. The station is hidden in a hollowed-out asteroid about 6 clicks from here. As they navigated through the field, Ian kept checking their sensors for pursuit. Time for answers. What exactly are we carrying? That chip, Groa said, contains proof of something impossible. Evidence that the Federation's entire history is a lie. There were others out here before humans reached the stars. They didn't die out or disappear like the history books say. They've been watching, waiting, infiltrating. And now they're almost ready to take it all back. What others? 10 demanded. What species? Not species, Groa corrected. One species. The precursors. The ones who built the jump gates, who left ruins on 1,000 worlds. Everyone thinks they vanished millions of years ago, but they just went quiet. Watching us grow, testing us, manipulating us. Those combat frames? Reverse engineered from their technology. The Federation's rapid expansion into space. Guided by their hidden hand. Ian frowned. If that's true, why reveal it now? Why give you the chip? Because some of us found out. A group within the Federation military discovered the truth. They've been working in secret, gathering evidence, preparing to expose everything. But there was a leak. The precursors found out. Now everyone who knows is being hunted down. I was just the messenger, trying to get the chip to someone who could use it. A massive asteroid loomed ahead of them, unremarkable except for a faint energy reading emanating from within. As they drew closer, a hidden docking bay became visible, its entrance barely large enough for their ship. Who exactly are we meeting? 10 asked as Ian carefully maneuvered them inside. Groa's expression was grim. Someone who's been fighting this war in secret for longer than any of us have been alive. Someone who can help us understand what's on that chip, and how to use it to save humanity. The docking bay doors closed behind them as they landed. Through the view screen, they could see a single figure waiting in an environment suit, watching their ship with apparent interest. I should warn you, Groa added, she doesn't much like visitors. Or anyone, really. But she's our only hope of understanding what we're really up against. Ian checked his weapons and shields. Well then, let's not keep her waiting. As they prepared to disembark, none of them noticed the small device that had attached itself to their hull during the firefight, a device that was even now transmitting their location to something ancient and patient, something that had been waiting a very, very long time for this moment. The hunt wasn't over. It was just beginning. The chase begins. The asteroid station's airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Ian led the way, weapon ready but not raised. 10 followed, her feathers slightly puffed in anticipation, while Groa brought up the rear, his bulk barely fitting through the human-sized corridor. The figure in the environment suit waited for them to approach. As they drew closer, the suit's faceplate cleared, revealing an elderly Asian woman with sharp eyes and a network of surgical scars tracing patterns across her face. "You're late," she said, her voice carrying a slight synthetic edge. "The precursor agents have already traced your trajectory. We have perhaps 30 minutes before they arrive." Ian glanced at Groa. "Friend of yours?" Dr. Helena Zhao, the woman introduced herself. Former Federation xenoarchaeologist, current fugitive, and one of the few humans alive who can read precursor code. She gestured for them to follow. Quickly. Time is critical. They followed her through a maze of corridors that showed signs of hasty evacuation, scattered equipment, half-packed crates, disabled terminals. The station had clearly been inhabited by more people recently. "Where is everyone?" 10 asked, her enhanced vision picking up details in the dim lighting. "Gone. Scattered. Dead." Helena's voice was clinical, detached. "The precursors have been systematically eliminating anyone who knows the truth. My research team discovered too much, asked too many questions. I'm the only one left." They entered what appeared to be a combination of laboratory and command center. Holographic displays showed star charts, archaeological data, and streams of incomprehensible symbols. Helena immediately moved to a secure terminal. "The chip," she demanded, holding out her hand. Ian hesitated. "How do we know we can trust you?" Helena's laugh was bitter. "Trust is irrelevant. The precursors are coming. That chip contains the last piece of evidence we need to expose them, and possibly the key to fighting back. Your choice is simple, trust me, or wait for them to arrive and take it from your corpse. Ian handed over the chip. Helena inserted it into her terminal and began working, her augmented fingers flying over the holographic controls. The precursors, she explained as she worked, didn't just go into hiding. They've been conducting a grand experiment. Humanity's expansion into space, our technological development, our wars and alliances, all of it carefully guided. They wanted to see how we would develop, what we would become. Why? Ten asked. What's the point? They're dying, Groa rumbled. Their civilization is ancient, decaying. They need hosts, Helena finished. They need new bodies, new minds to inhabit. They've spent millennia guiding our development, shaping us into suitable vessels. And now they think we're ready. The terminal chimed as it finished decoding the chip's contents. Helena's expression darkened as she read. It's worse than we thought. The infiltration is nearly complete. Key positions in the Federation military, government, corporate sector, all compromised. The final phase is scheduled to begin within days. Final phase? Ian moved closer to examine the data. Mass consciousness transfer, Helena explained. They've developed a way to override human neural patterns with their own. They plan to implement it through the Federation's communication network. Billions of humans transformed in an instant, their minds overwritten by precursor consciousness. A proximity alarm blared. 10 rushed to a sensor display. Multiple ships dropping out of FTL. Same configuration as before, but more of them. At least 12 vessels. Helena immediately began transferring data to portable devices. We need to split up. The evidence has to reach multiple secure locations. If they catch any one of us, the others might still have a chance to warn Dash. The station shook violently. Emergency lights flashed as alerts screamed through the comm system. They're not waiting. Groa shouted. They're firing. Helena thrust data chips into their hands. Different locations, different evidence. Ian, you have the coordinates for a hidden precursor facility. 10, you have the identity of their agents in the Federation government. Groa, you have the technical specifications of their consciousness transfer technology. She kept one chip for herself. We go in different directions. Don't tell each other where. The less any of us knows about the other's destinations, the better. What about you? Ian asked as another impact rocked the station. I'm going to buy you time. Helena moved to a control panel. There's a maintenance tunnel network that leads to emergency shuttles. Go. Now. 10 grabbed Ian's arm. We need to move. They ran, following Helena's directions through the tunnels. Behind them, they could hear the sound of boarding parties breaching the station's hull. The tunnel split, forcing them to separate. Stay alive. Ian called to the others. We'll find each other when it's done. The last thing he saw was Ten's determined nod before she disappeared down her tunnel. Groa took a different path, his bulk barely squeezing through. Ian reached his designated shuttle just as the sound of combat erupted from the main station. He launched without proper prep, trusting his skills in the shuttle's automated systems to keep him alive. As he accelerated away from the asteroid, he saw other shuttles launching in different directions. On his sensors, the attacking ships seemed confused, splitting their forces to pursue multiple targets. Helena's voice came through on a tight beam transmission, remember, trust no one. The precursors can duplicate human forms perfectly. Anyone could be one of them. Find the facility. Find the proof. Save our species. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Ian's sensors registered a massive explosion in the asteroid station's core. He had no time to mourn. The coordinates in his data chip led to a system on the edge of known space. With precursor ships in pursuit and no way to know who to trust, he had to focus on survival. As he programmed the FTL jump, he couldn't help but smile grimly. "Hold my beer," he muttered to himself, and launched into the unknown. Behind him, the puzzle pieces of humanity's greatest crisis scattered across the stars, carried by desperate messengers in a race against time. And somewhere, watching through countless electronic eyes and artificial minds, the precursors began to move their final pieces into position. The Real chase was about to begin.